Hey everyone! In the new science fiction companion for Savage Worlds, there's a new system called clashes. It's an alternative to things like dramatic tasks or even a chase for things like doing a bombing run, a strafing run, running a blockade, things like that. And it provides a different flavor and a different feel for it, and it's actually a lot of fun. So let's talk about it today. Savage Worlds, one of the best games. Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd really like your likes and subscribes. It's fun to see the numbers go up. And we love doing the channel, and it gives us a little more, oomph to do it. So please do subscribe. That'd be fun. So what is a clash? So a clash is not quite a dramatic task, though it has a similar kind of feel to it. The whole point of a clash is to something where you're up against an enemy, you have an objective you're trying to reach. It's not just a matter of getting enough task tokens to say you succeeded. It's really you've got an objective, there's something you're trying to do. You're trying to get to the warp gate before the bad guys close it, and you're wading through their forces trying to get there. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with clashes. So let's talk about kind of the basics of what a clash is. And so you need to start with defining the objectives of the clash, what's going to be done. So the objectives, first, success is determined, right out of the book here. So first, success is determined by accumulating task tokens, but by the encounter's objectives. Take out an enemy force, bomb the enemy droid factory, escape the blockade, defeat the certain number of enemies, and so on. So one of the aspects of a clash is what's called clash tokens. And clash tokens are a little bit different than dramatic task tokens, which are all about victory. Clash tokens are something you can spend then on a benefit later, whether it's improving your chance of evading, adding more damage to a foe, things like that. So it says about clash tokens here. Clash tokens are still gathered by the player characters who are piloting a vehicle, but instead of tracking success, they can be used to help themselves and their crewmates take out foes, evade enemies, and more. So those are the two kind of key things. A whole point of a clash is that you're going after an objective, there's something you're trying to capture, and then there's these idea of clash tokens that are gained and then can be spent. So let's talk about the basics of a clash. So a clash is either done in 5 rounds for something that's kind of straightforward. Activities are short. The narrative is short. An example in the book might be a quick bombing run where you're driving into the enemy and then you're trying to drop a bomb and then you're trying to get out. There's for long scenes, 10 rounds. And so that might be like a major space battle, a major dogfight, something like that, that takes a long time to get completed. And so you would use 10 rounds. Now, when I was reading through this and working through it, just haven't had a chance to do a lot of play testing with it. But what I've done is, feels like 5 is about right in general. 10 seems really it takes a real long time to get through 10 rounds of it. So I don't know, even for combat, I might, or for like space combat, I might use something like 5 rounds. I don't know. It seems 10 is a long time, but in the comments, you tell me if that 10 is just the perfect right amount. I'd love to hear about it. Then the last thing is characters and your wild cards, your key foes, that sort of thing. They can take any standard action on their turn. That includes things like testing, supporting, attacking, doing things like that. Now, obviously, if you're in a spacecraft, the person attacking is going to be on the weapons, and you're not just going to be shooting your pistols like you might do in a chase where you're like trying to shoot out the back of the car as somebody's chasing you. But so any standard action is okay. One of the key things then in the turn, you can do attacks, and attacks are handled a little bit different in a clash. They have a couple of special things. So let me talk about those. So if you're the attacker, the range that your attack's at is either short or medium if your pilot's action card is higher than the foe's. So that kind of means that they've got an advantage because their action card is higher. They're going first. That gives you, from an attack standpoint, a benefit if you can either do that at short range or medium range. If you're not and you're below the highest foe's action card, then you're at long range as far as any attack goes. What's interesting is they have a thing called reaction fire in Savage World Science Fiction Companion, which says if you're firing at short range and they have a system that supports reaction fire, like a close-in Gatling laser or something that's for point defenses. It says, from a reaction fire standpoint, weapons with this quality spray massive amounts of matter or energy, making them quick to fire against enemies who dart in and out of range to attack. In a clash or a chase, reaction fire weapons may fire once per round at -2 when their craft is attacked from foes in short range. So that's an important aspect. You may not want to be in short range when you're having an advantage if you think the enemy has one of these kind of reaction fire weapons. So your attacks, the benefit or the penalties for your attack come into two categories. So you're going to have a -2 if your handling is less than your foe. So that's kind of like in chases where you get the benefit. This one you get a penalty if your handling is less than your foe. You also get a penalty of -2 if your speed is less than your foe. So if you're attacking somebody who's faster, more maneuverable, you're going to have a hard time hitting them. But you can still try. Why not? On success, we resolve damage like normal. You can apply, they suggest you apply the heavy metal rule from Science Fiction Companion. And what's the heavy metal rule? That one says, calculating the damage of heavy weapons, their armor-piercing value, and targets with high armor can be a little daunting in the middle of dogfights, mech duels, and hover tank battles. To simplify the process, we've given all the weapons and vehicles in this book a class. When an attack successfully hits a target, simply compare the weapon's class to the target's class and consult the table below. And so there's a table. I'll try to make sure that I put that in the video. And so basically it has to do with your class of weapons versus the class of the ship or your foe you're attacking. That determines how many wounds can be done. So on the table it mentions if the weapon class is one level below the vehicle class, you do no damage. It's 0. However, on the table it says if you get a raise, you get a +1 for wounds caused. So you could actually cause a wound if you got a raise. If you've got weapon classes 2 or more levels below vehicle class, then there's no effect and nothing happens. But then the other side is each level weapon class above the vehicle class, that's actually +1 wound. So if you've got a heavy weapon and you're going against a smaller ship that's not high class, you can just rip a hole in it just like that. So that's attacking. So the key thing attacking is it's a little bit different. The range is determined by what pilot has the highest action card. You get penalties based on the performance of the ship that you're going against, whether it's speed or handling. And they recommend using the heavy metal rule for damage. And I can understand that because that's a lot of bookkeeping to get through if you're trying to do all the weapons damage and handling and all. That loses the fast, furious, fun aspect of it. So heavy metal seems to be a great opportunity to do that. They do make a very specific thing about fixed weapons, like coaxial weapons that the pilot would be straight down being the one firing or something like that. They can only be fired if the pilot's action card is higher than the foe's. So that makes a lot of sense, right? So you got weapons, you got to be maneuvering better so that you can get that target lined up in front of your ship. So that's going to be something that you'll see a lot in dogfights as far as the rules go. And that'll be an interesting, I think, not something that I had a chance to work through, that kind of scenario. But I feel that would be interesting where you're really trying to maneuver and get into the right position to shoot the foe, and it's really dependent on your action card. Really good chance to spend some bennies to get better action cards and stuff like that. And then the last thing they mention from an attack standpoint is concentrating fire they talk about, which gives +1 for each weapon that is part of the barrage. So if you've got multiple weapons, you can say I'm shooting them all, concentrating their fire, so I can get +1s to hit. You have to choose a primary weapon. So every weapon doesn't get to resolve damage, but you pick the primary weapon. So if you got a large cannon and then you've got a bunch of like lasers that you're bringing along with it, you would use that large cannon or whatever to resolve the damage if that's got the better damage bonus So to continue with the execution. So we get in action cards, we're doing our turns. Just like in dramatic tasks, a club is a complication. So, and very similar to very similar to chase mechanics. If you get a club at the beginning, the pilot has to roll a maneuvering roll at -2. If they're successful, they just take their turn. If they fail, they lose a clash token and they roll on the out of control table. And so we know the out of control table can do a lot of things interesting. Again, I'll try to put it in the video so you can take a look at it. So finally, I alluded to clash tokens. We said that they're an important part. So what are they? So first, how do you get them, right? So there's two ways of getting a clash token. So the pilot or the person operating the vehicle, they have an additional option on their turn, right out of the book here. It says anytime their action card is a joker, heart, or diamond, so it's not, you get the black cards, it doesn't help you any. They may attempt to gain a clash token by making a maneuvering roll. This is a limited action, so they're going to do it once, and uses the operator's boating, driving, piloting skill as appropriate, plus the vehicle's handling is normal, so that bonus or penalty comes into play. A success grants 1 token, and a raise grants 2. And there's ways of using it, and we'll talk about that in a second. Speed, subtract 2 if the fastest enemy's vehicle's top speed rating is higher than you. So you subtract 2 from your roll if your enemy is faster than you across the board. So that's how you get a clash token. Second way to get a clash token is at the beginning of the scenario. There might be some planning, there might be some getting ahead, maybe you did some scoping out for weaknesses in the defense or whatever. And so one of the players can make a battle roll to gain a token on success or 2 on raises. So just think about it, like you're going to try to do a bombing run against an enemy installation. If you scope it out or you do reconnaissance, the game master may give you an opportunity to gain another clash token. So you come right into the scenario with a clash token already. And then you can gain them through these piloting checks. So what can you use a clash token for? I mentioned that clash tokens aren't like success tokens that you have in dramatic tasks, which are all about you collect enough, you're successful. There's something you can spend. They're another kind of meta currency, and you can spend them on a few things. Like, for example, for damage, which is a free action, the pilot can spend a clash token and increase the number of wounds caused by attack by 1. So very important, right, because we can have 0 wounds if our weapon class is lower than the vehicle class. So this option gives you a chance to actually do some damage if you have that opportunity. You can't increase the no effect result. So in other words, if there's really no chance of you to do any damage, well then that's just the way it is. Escape, which is a limited action. So you would do that you could do that as a multi-action along with trying to get a task token, or you can do this as just your basic action. A pilot may spend 3 clash tokens to attempt to escape an encounter by making an opposed maneuvering roll against an enemy on the other side's choice, usually with the best handling, a wild card, whatever. So if you fail, though, you get your clash token back. So that would be for those scenarios where you're trying to disengage, to get away. Evade, which is also a free action. You spend a clash token and you negate a vehicle's wound that is taken. So that's really cool. If you take a wound, you can spend a clash token to avoid that wound. And that is done, tokens can be spent in this way. Multiple clash tokens can be spent in this way, and it can be done before or after any soak rolls for shields, the ace edge, etc. So you can wait until see how the soak roll goes before you do an evade. So that's cool. Intercept, 3 clash tokens and an opposed maneuvering roll to try and make another vehicle stop. It may not make sense in all scenarios, but you can have them, maybe you're pushing them in the direction you want to move them. If it fails, the pilot takes his tokens back, but that gives you a chance to do that. Last is objective, or not last, but objective is a limited action as well. This is a catch-all category, it says. In GM for use, objective-based missions and should generally require 3 task tokens, a successful maneuvering roll, and a successful maneuvering roll. This might include dropping bombs on an arsenal factory, reaching the jump gate before it closes, or even getting out of reach of some of the other attackers in the clash. So when you finally get to that point where you're reaching that objective, if you got 3 clash tokens, you can leverage them. And then the last one is replenishing shields, which is a limited action. Pilot can spend a clash token to replenish all our vehicle shields. So you're spending clash tokens to do interesting things, or even at the end of the scenario, you're spending 3 of them to be successful in your objective. The book gives a great example, and so I'm going to give an example as well, which isn't what's in the book. So let's talk about our scenario. The characters are in a small ship trying to get through an orbital shield before the enemy closes it. So they're coming in, they're trying to get to the planet. There's a shield around the planet with a gate that allows you to get in, and maybe you're trying to get some special hard drive or something. I don't know. So initially the players sit down, are making a plan, how they're going to do it. They've done some recon. They know there's one large ship and there's a number of fighters. They understand how they work. And so as a game master, it's like, okay, we're going to give you a chance to roll that battle roll. And they get a success. So they start with a clash token. Good for them. That's awesome. So in our scenario, there's a main battle type ship, large cruiser or what have you, and a number of fighters. We're going to give the bad guys 2 action cards, one for the main ship, which has a wild card on it, and one for the fighter squadron. In this scenario, the main enemy ship is faster than the player ship, but less maneuverable. The battleship has 1 large heavy weapon, which we'll say is a class 4 weapon, and the players have a medium cannon that is class 3. This main ship is class 4, so we can see that we're already at a disadvantage. And the player's ship is also a class 3. So that's kind of where we're at. So on the first round, let's talk about the round. So on the first round, the piloting player gets an ace of diamonds, and let's say the battleship gets a queen and the fighters get a 10. The other player on the weapon system, we're going to say receives a 5. So the pilot goes first. It's a higher action card, and it's a diamond, so they can go after a clash token. So let's say they decide to take only 1 action and do that piloting roll to get the clash token. Since the battleship is faster, the player gets a -2, but they get a success and receive a clash token. This is looking good for the players, right? Now they already have 2 clash tokens they can spend for what they need to do. So the battleship, the main cruiser that they're going against, is piloted by the infamous Baron von Deadly. And the battleship decides that they're going to attack would be their best course of action. The Baron is at a lower action card, so his shot are at long range. So it's a long range fight. So everything that goes with it, the penalties, all that kind of stuff. And so he takes a shot. Let's say he misses with all those penalties. Next up is the fighters. Now we could do the fighters as a kind of a group and treat them as a wild card, or we can do them independently. It all depends on how you want to do it. So the Game Master, in this case, we're going to say the fighters are class 2. They're small with a class 3 laser. Each of the fighters are piloted by extras, and so they roll. Let's say there's maybe four fighters. They all roll. They fail. Don't do any damage. So finally, the player on the weapon goes. They decide that the battleship is the biggest threat, this cruiser that they're going after. And, I'd use cruiser battleship interchangeably. I know they're different. Is the biggest threat, so they decide to attack, even though they're at a disadvantage. Since the foe ship is faster, they have a -2 penalty, we know. But since the pilot had the higher card, they decide they're going to shoot from short range to get rid of any penalties from a range standpoint. So it's a long shot for damage, as the class difference between the weapon and the ship is 1. They are successful, but they don't do any damage. Now, let's say they got a raise. They would have got that +1 damage. So they use this heavy weapons rule. So we're using that, as I mentioned, with the classes. And so they do not get an attack, and they do not do damage. However, the battleship still needs to roll out of control table on this hit. And the roll indicates, so on the table they roll, and that indicates everyone is distracted on board, which will help the next time the battleship fires. So even if you're not going to do damage, it still may be valuable to take that shot and try to get a hit. So The second round, and we'll only do 2 rounds. So the second round, the pilot gets a queen of hearts, another great draw. The weapons player gets a 10 of spades, the battleship gets a 9 of diamonds, and the fighters get a 2 of clubs. So they're at a disadvantage, and they have a complication. So the pilot decides to use one of his task tokens to do damage. Now it's a free action, so they can wait and do it when they need to do it. So in your other situation, so they're going to, in this case, let's say support the gunner. They need to do damage to this cruiser, get them out a little bit, force them maybe to retreat so that they can get to this gate. So they're going to do their action, or they're going to do a support roll. And so let's say they're successful, they get the gunner a +1. And then since they got a free action with respect to the damage and spend that task token, they're going to leverage that with the gunner. So let's say the gunner goes, and again, we decide to shoot from short range. Pilot has a higher action card. Again, we got the speed at -2, but for the support, he gets a +1. So the minus is only -1. Let's say he has a great success with a raise. He does no wounds basically, but he gets plus wounds for the fact that he got a raise. And the damage free action, the pilot can spend a clash token. That increases the number of wounds by attack by 1. So they did 2 wounds. On a big old battleship, they're doing 2 wounds, and that's like awesome. Because again, he has to roll out of the control table, distracted, -2, already had a wound from the raise before, if we got a raise before. And so really does a great job attacking. So cool. So that's 2 rounds. It's pretty simple. Clash tokens can be spent. You gain them by doing piloting rolls or whatever, like boating, whatever those rolls make sense. And so it's really kind of a great alternative for something like I'm doing a bombing run, I'm coming in, instead of doing it as a dramatic task and saying what skill are you using and how are you implementing that for each round, you can just use clashes to move things along fast. If you got ship-to-ship combat, you can use heavy weapons to kind of save time and streamline. So clashes are pretty cool. So once again, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. Again, we'd love likes, we'd love subscribes, and we will see you in the next video. Savage Worlds, one of the best games